Pleasant day to everybody. First of all, happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. God knows why we have mothers, not just fathers. In this world, a mother's love is so powerful for her children. I put up a post that it goes beyond the grave, you know. So, happy belated Mother's Day to all mothers. And I would say let's have a Mother's Day week. So let's do something in tribute and honor to our mothers. You know, as a Christian, those who are born of the Spirit believe that a metaphor for the Holy Spirit can be a mother. Jesus said, as a hen, gathers its young, so is my love for you. So in that metaphor, God shows his motherly side, shall we say. All right, so let's give tribute to our mothers today. Shout out to anybody who's watching this right now. Leave a little comment in the comment section wishing mothers a blessed and happy belated Mother's Day. And shall we make it special for our mothers, those of us who have either adopted mothers or biological mothers, whatever it is. Let's make them feel special today. All right, so let's get into what I'm going to be talking about, which is Restore the Snyderverse. Actually, today is a day for the hashtag Restore the Snyderverse, and that's why I chose, on a day like today, to speak a little bit about how far we've come, what is transpiring. Now, in the background, you're going to hear a lot of different background noises. My washing machine is washing clothes. People are doing construction in the background. So you may hear those noises in addition to my voice. Hey, so hopefully my voice is loud enough that you can hear me in the conversation that I'm going to engage in. Feel free to leave a chat, leave a comment as I go through this. I hope to be as brief as possible. I promise not anything. I can't make any promises. Let's start with Restore the Snyderverse. Before I go into that, I usually leave a piece of scripture for you guys. My name, of course, is Christ. I am disciple. So I'm going to leave something with you guys today. The scripture comes from the book of John. It's John chapter 3 and verse 16. I like this piece of scripture a lot. It's a scripture that a lot of people in the Christendom circles know by route. And I wanted to share it with somebody today who needs to hear it. And it's about love. And I want to just share this aspect of it. When a very prestigious and famous high rabbi of the Jewish faith came to see Jesus by night because he didn't want to be seen in the day with him, he asked Jesus a question. He said to him, how do we get into the kingdom of God? Jesus told him, you can't see the kingdom of God. So he said, so how? How do I get into the kingdom? He says, you must be born again. You must be born again. Rebirth. It's a DC theme, by the way. Rebirth. And Nicodemus said, but how can I go back into my mother's womb? Mother, as in Mother's Day, right? And Jesus said, they who are born of the water and the Spirit. Now let me explain a little bit about what water is. if you ever, well, all of us who were born not in test tubes but in actual bodies, in actual people, we were encased in a sac inside of our mother's womb. That sac's known as the amniotic sac. And that sac contains fluid in it. And how someone can know that it is time for the pregnancy, the birthing stage of the pregnancy, is if that water breaks. It means the child is ready to be born into the world. And so when Jesus says they who are born of water and the Spirit, he is speaking about a natural thing in a spiritual lens. And he's saying that if you are born of water, as all of us here who were born of mothers, this is why I want to give so much kudos to mothers on Mother's Day. If you're born of water, which would be the water breaking, because you were contained in water, then you have a natural birth. But when you are born of the Spirit, you are reborn in terms of your mind, and you have a different way of viewing things. Okay? So, when Jesus told him those who are born of water and the Spirit, he's speaking about this rebirth of your mind. Now, he goes on to say, and by the way, Jesus himself, when he was pierced on the cross, and all of this is relevant to the DC and the DCEU, and even the DCU going forward if it get its feet off the ground, is all of this is part of DC lore. In fact, Zack Snyder very carefully paid homage to this. So, when they pierced Jesus' side, blood came out of his side and water came out of his side. What is water? Water is symbolic of life. The spirit of a man is water. You were alive and born in water. When the water came out, you had to follow the water out of your mother's womb. Water, as we all know, is very vital to life, because water is life. If you don't have water anywhere, you will not live for very long. Air has water in it. It's known as water vapor. When you take air into your lungs, the only way the gases will exchange in your lungs is because you also take in water with the air. And so at the surface of the lungs, there is a certain thing called surfactant, which allows the water to stick to the walls of the lungs and cause gaseous exchange. If it was just air, this exchange would not happen. Water is literally necessary for you to breathe. Now, why am I saying all of this? Why am I going to such detail? Because the next thing that Nicodemus asked Jesus is, how do you mean somebody born of water and the Spirit? And Jesus said, you are a rabbi that teaches in the synagogue and you don't know these things. He said, he who is born of water and the Spirit is born again and shall be part of the kingdom of God. You cannot be part of the kingdom of God if you are not born of water and the Spirit. The Spirit, for those of you who don't know, is simply life. This is what the Spirit is. Life. Life is not easily describable. We don't know how, we can't control how it begins, and we definitely can't control how it ends. That life that you have in you, the life of a human, there are many different kinds of life. There's life of animals, humans, plants, blah, 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 right? But the life of a human is the spirit of a man. It's not seen. Spiritual things are invisible. But it is what keeps me animated and alive as I'm speaking to you. And it's also something that keeps everything else alive and animated and so on. So, when we speak specifically of the life of humans, I'm going to speak only specifically about the life of humans. When I say born of water and the Spirit, the water there is the life. It's a symbolic symbol. It's a metaphor for the life of a human. And spirit is life in general. All right, the life that gives everything life. Okay? So you have to be reborn. Now, having said that, Nicodemus says to Jesus, so how can a man be born again? And Jesus said this. And to me, this is the most important thing I could have ever heard in my life. He said, for God so loved. I told you, this is about love. This is not about all these other things I'm talking about, but it's about love. God so loved this world that he gave his only son, namely Jesus, to die that whosoever believes that he had then done this, that he sent his own son in the form of a man to die. If anybody believes this, that this is true, whosoever believes in what the Son is saying, not only that he died, but also in what he said, what he lived, his life, that he was an innocent man, and that he was sacrificed. I'm going to say it again, that he was sacrificed. Let me say it one more time, that he was sacrificed for our benefit. I'm going to say it one more time. He was sacrificed for our benefit. Whosoever believes in him, it's not just believes in him, the Son, that is, shall not perish, but have everlasting life. You and I will have all of this that you see. Life in its entirety and in its abundance. Because life is a cycle. It does not begin. It does not end. It will never end. And you have to understand that the apprehension, everybody wants to live forever. That's cool. But that's not enough. There is something called life abundantly. Abundance of life, meaning life that gushes out of you. It's not just for you, but it is a life that flows through everything that is alive, everything that exists, whether it's the constellations of the universe, the stars, the sun, whether it's the particulates of the wall that vibrate at different frequencies, whether it is your little cockroach that's running around in your room right now, or a spider on the wall, or a gecko, or a bird sweetly tweeting in the trees, or an iguana that eats out all my okra. Whether it's a pest, whether it's a flowing river, whatever it is, even the animation that we make, even this electrical, digital, electromagnetic signals that are going through this thing we call the internet, life allows all of this to happen and flows. And to be part of that, to be part of something bigger than yourself, and to be able to continue onwards with it forever is awesome. And this is what these comic book movies tried to capture. That's what they try to tell you about. The same story. Um, so I wanted to get you guys to understand it in real terms. And somebody needed to hear this. Somebody needed to hear the good news in a way that makes sense to them. You don't have to be a Christian to understand this. You don't have to be a believer in the Most High God to know this. But once you start to understand what this is, you will. You will, because it's there. It exists in front of your face every day. You may take it for granted, but it's right there. You know, something that Ezra Miller said, I want to talk about reality. I'm a realist. Something Ezra Miller said in Zack Snyder's Justice League that brought tears to my eyes. And it really epitomizes what love is. From the depths of his heart, Barry Allen started to speak to his father. And his father was in prison. His father was in prison. He's running through using the Speed Force. He's running, racing back through time. And he says to his father something that, to this moment, as you can see, my eyes are getting teared up. It still gets to my heart. I really feel it deeply, because I, as any other human being in this rat race called, this system and this existence, and even life itself, we struggle with things. And this was the moment where he was pushed to have to do something that no one save himself would know about. He was testing himself. He was proving himself. In Man of Steel, Jor-El told Clark, he told his son, Cal, he told him, keep testing your limits. It's choking me up. For those of you who understand what I'm saying, because this is really I'm getting very emotional about it. There are no limits. Can you understand that, ladies and gentlemen? There is a scripture that says, with God, nothing is impossible. I can't help it. I really feel like crying. You guys have been testing your limits. You guys are reversing time. You're doing it. It's real. All these little myths speak on real things. And you, I don't care what background you come from, you're doing it. You're doing what people say is impossible. And Barry was saying that he was pushed to the point where he had to do something that was so risky. He didn't know what the consequences of it would be. The thing he feared to do, he stepped into his fear and transcended to something else. And no one knew about it, save him and Darkseid. Darkseid knew what was happening. And Granny Goodness and all those other guys, because they're in a different quantum. You are doing some impossible things. You are like Barry Allen. You are like Kal-El. But I want you to understand there's more. And that there's so much more you can do. With the thing that has you here. There's more. You can be a part of something even bigger than Restore the Snyderverse fandom, which in itself is growing by numbers, just like how, strangely enough, it's patterning itself somewhat after the early Church of God, where numbers were added ridiculously, and they were doing phenomenal things. And, you know, unless a seed falls to earth and dies, you can't have a forest. You can't have a lot of trees. The sacrifice that the one we call Joshua, aka Jesus, the Messiah, the sacrifice he made, I know you felt it before. You felt your mother make a sacrifice for you. You know what that feels like. A lot of you are comfortable in the love of people who sacrifice so much for you because they love you. And they want to see you bear fruit. But ultimately, in the end, it is life itself. It's God, what we call God. It is life itself that is taking care of you so that you can become what they all hope and see you to be. I'm sorry. So, I feel very passionate about this. And that's what I saw in these movies, which is why I use it to share with you guys. I don't know, honestly, what this new administration or what these people could actually do to bring that kind of value forward. You know, life is full of all kinds of unexpected turns and twists. I didn't know what I was going to say when I came on here. But I wanted to share something from the heart. Didn't expect it to be this emotional. But I know there's a lot of people out here who are not happy. They're not happy. see it on Twitter. You see people make some absurd statements, and they know better. And the fuel of hate and rage and some negativity, it's only poisoning us. It's not helping us. I think Restore the Snyderverse is a nice hashtag. It's not negative. It's not something that is obtrusive. And I hope we can see it come to fruition. That's the truth. I believe it will happen. I have the faith to believe that, but I wanted to say something more. John 3:16 tears me up for many reasons. It's one of my favorite scriptures because it relates to us. And a very great sacrifice. And the sacrifice was made by someone who, I believe, was a parent. Clothed in all form. Like a mother, father, uncle, aunt, caretaker. Someone like that. And I just believe that you can extract almost anything out of movies. You can find positive things to pull out of movies. Why does criticism have to be only negative things? You can find truth in anything. Doesn't mean that the thing has to be true 100%, but you can find truth in anything. I'm not here to proclaim anything. But what I want to tell you guys is keep on doing what you're doing. It's beautiful, and it's a reflection of a much bigger theme about life, about what we call God. And I hope that you will be transformed in your journey. You won't come to the end of your hero's journey the same as when you embarked off and left it. It's a journey. Zach wanted to give us something a little bit more than just entertainment. He wanted to give us something we could use, and we've been using it. But you don't just use it for one thing. Not just for Restore the Snyderverse. Use it for a lot of things in your life. Expand it outward. I believe that this is a very good thing because we've seen people from all kinds of walks of life, from all kinds of political affiliations and different types of governance come together. That's beautiful. I advocate you guys to continue doing that. And let's talk among each other. Let's converse. Let's not just have friends and have our little cliques and cliques. Let's try to reach over to somebody else who has a different point of view to us. Try to understand. I know some people are just being trolls. If they are, you're going to have to Listen to their hearts and decide if this conversation is for you to continue or not. If it is not, then just move on. Sometimes somebody who's trolling you, okay, so I was just speaking about if somebody's trolling you, sometimes the issue is not with, it's not about the subject, it's about something else in their life that's bothering them that you may have the answer for. You'll be able to help them with. So, always think about those things, you know what I mean? So anyway, my phone battery died. That's why I was going for a minute. But what I wanted to talk to you guys about in addition is I'm going to talk about this particular thing. What do you think would have happened if the Flash hadn't been pushed to reverse time? Because he reversed time, he generated enough energy to be able to propel Cyborg into the mother boxes. What if everything went as planned and he didn't generate enough energy? What I'm saying is, adversity in our life sometimes helps us to step up our game, helps us to push to that next level. And so, when there's a yang to the yin, do understand that that is part of the process to move forward. A lot of us sometimes are disappointed with how things have panned out in our lives, right? They have regrets and they have problems, you know, because adversity is a part of life. But you have to understand that that is something that helps you to move up, step up your game to the next level. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, when looking at the Flash and what happened with him, think about what happens with us as well, okay, in our lives, and how we have to step up our game given the situation that we're confronted with. A lot of times we look at the problem and we don't think about how we're going to find the solution. Notice, when not given the certain amount of pressure, the Flash, you know, he wasn't decisive as to the decision he needed to make. He was, doubting it. He was skeptical about it. He was questioning it. But as the adversity came to him, he knew he had to step up his game to the situation. And then he did. You know what I'm saying? He stepped up his game to the situation. So in dealing with these different challenges that are ahead of us, sometimes we just need to be pushed to the next level. All right, so what am I saying to restore the Snyderverse fans out there, or the people who want to see the Snyderverse restored? I'm saying to you, the adversity that's coming to you, and when it intensifies, it doesn't mean that we need to. Well, yeah, some of you guys will answer them back. I mean, we all human beings, and we'll answer back people, and we'll, you know what I'm saying? But really, try instead to see how this gets you to step up to the next level. Try to see what it is that you were debating about in moving forward with this Restore the Snyderverse, that now you have a crystal clear idea of what you need to do. Because the intensity stepping up on something means that you are actually supposed to get more certain about what it is you're doing. You know, you're more focused on what you need to do. Okay, so having said that, let me talk about a couple things. One, we know the state of the DCU, as it's called now by James Gunn. Even though I I don't consider it the DCEU anymore because the characters and the people involved in the DCU are, I think, uh, people who are more with the Walter Hamada thing and so on. But nonetheless, we know there are problems with the DCU. No DCU film, and I consider DCU from Walter Hamada's initiative with Shazam all the way down to now. No DCU film, except probably Shazam, but no DCU film has actually Shazam didn't. No DCU film has passed $400 million. All right, Shazam made some profit for the studio, but no other DCU film has made profit for the studio. All right, this is just the reality of the situation. Um, Also, we also know that the position Warner Brothers Discovery is in right now, the shareholders are actually nervous and they're worried about that position. Okay. We also know that Jim Lee is now the head of DC. He's the president of DC. We also know that Zack Snyder had a full circle event, was successful, created some buzz, and Jim Lee also participated in that event with the posters, etc., and the idea of full circle. We also know Zack Snyder's Justice League has been winning polls on Twitter and elsewhere. Henry Cavill's Superman is so well liked, again, winning polls everywhere. We're seeing Ben Affleck's Batman winning polls everywhere on Twitter, on Facebook. We're also seeing a whole bunch of Snyderverse, Restore the Snyderverse groups on Facebook, Instagram, IG, etc. So you guys have been doing some really good work. You guys put up tweets, videos, all kinds of things. It's really good. I even see some of you guys on YouTube now. We also realize that Zack Snyder's Justice League is really won over people who may not have been very passionate about BVS, may have liked Man of Steel but didn't like BVS. So we've seen a lot of widespread change when it comes to Zack Snyder's take on DC. Particularly, Zack Snyder's Justice League really put out a lot of goodwill to a lot of people. And of course, in the Full Circle event, Zack Snyder's Justice League was released in IMAX, and people saw it in IMAX. And I really would love to see that in IMAX, just me personally. And so there's been a campaign going on with different hashtags. There's been uh, ZSJL in IMAX, and I've been talking about release the Snyder Cut because I like that old hashtag. Release the Snyder Cut in cinemas and IMAX and so on. And that campaign, again, it starts off at Twitter and then it goes to Facebook and it goes all over the place, right? And these little campaigns that have been going on right now, they're really reaping rewards. You're seeing so many people responding to you, people who normally wouldn't respond to these things. Now, there are people who, again, I don't really, I mean, I do it sometimes just to entertain myself, which is not good. But there are people who, of course, do not like this. But from what I see, these people are a minority. Most of the DC fans out there, and most of the people who watch DC and support DC, are really way more than these fans. These fans, the most they've contributed to DC and DC movies, from what I see, they've contributed about $200 million. So those people who are considered, or they consider DC as, you know, the version that we're seeing, they really, really enjoy this version of DC, the DCU, what Gunn is going to bring to the table, what Amada and Safran and those guys have been doing. Those people who really appreciate that, they're not the people who are the majority. They contribute about $200 million to DC. if so much. They may not even contribute that amount. So I don't think this is the way to go. Personally, I think Warner Brothers Discovery really do themselves a great service if they release the Snyder Cut in cinemas. They'll have to make an announcement and so on because that movie is cinema ready. You've seen that. It is a 4 hour long movie, so there will be a little break in between. But it is definitely a movie that should see cinemas. That's what it was designed to do in the first place, particularly in IMAX. I would love to see it in IMAX. And I believe very strongly that this form of entertainment um, will do a lot of goodwill for the company, which they're in a financial situation, and executives are trying to get paid tremendous amounts of money, and the shareholders are not in favor of that. In fact, the shareholders, I believe, I think a little less than 50% of the shareholders voted against that because the company has been losing money, horrendously, and not only that, but now the company hasn't had a box office hit in forever. I think the closest thing to box office hit they've had uh, was Dune and the Batman, and you know, they've also had um, Godzilla versus Kong, but then they distributed Godzilla versus Kong. Legendary actually did it, so they've only had like three box office successes. At least they raked in profits, and so those profits they had to distribute a lot of those profits. So it's really, really, really not a good situation for them. Um, and of course, those of you who are using the hashtags boycott WB or remove James Gunn or whatever, while these are negative hashtags, I understand the necessity for them to give the company some sort of direction that James Gunn is he's not in he just isn't in alignment with the majority of DC fans. Majority of DC fans don't want to see what he has to offer, right? They're not it's not that they don't want to see it. They're not interested in seeing it because by releasing Zack Snyder's Justice League, what you did was you basically got a really good response to that movie, and fans were willing to move on with Zack and see what else he had in store. And even those who didn't really particularly like his style of directing, they were interested in seeing what was in store. There's no interest for what James Gunn has. It's just what it is. So what's going to happen is, the Flash movie that's coming up, they're trying to build hype for it, and they got different social media influencers and stuff trying to push it, but that movie's not going to do well either because again it's more of the same, a lot of ham. They're using the same formula that did not work for Wonder Woman 84, for Birds of Prey, for the Suicide Squad, for Black Adam. It doesn't work. Why are you trying to put humor in things that are not, you know, people don't want to see humor in it. They want to see something a little bit more, just a little bit more mature. And so what's happening is, the situation, there's a pushback on that. And so whether the Flash movie, may have a good plot or not, I've seen the plot of the Flash movie, so I kind of know what it is. Um, and it's not a bad plot. I mean, it's not bad. I'll be honest with you, it's a decent plot, but I just don't think that people are going to go watch it because of the ham, because of the jokes that they're going to shove in, studio jokes and stuff like that. They're going to do to Andy Muschietti's movie. You might as well just drop all the jokes, in the movie, and just run it, as plain as possible. The movie's getting a lot of hate from people who, don't like that the movie's going to move away from the Snyderverse and go into some other universe which James Gunn is going to push. And James Gunn's gonna do more of the same. A lot of ham, a lot of jokes, just a lot of Marvel stuff. And he's gonna try and make it more edgy, so there's f bombs or whatever. But to me, again, doesn't. this is not the direction that they should be going in. Um, and I'm being super honest with you guys. I really think the Snyderverse now should replace what they have in store. I think James Gunn, Peter Safran, done enough damage for the brand. I think they should leave and have new, fresh, like maybe Mr. Abdi and Mr. Luca. I know they're taking on a great thing, but they need to have them there. And if Zach can come back and direct his movies in there, that would be better. I'm just being honest, right? I think that would do a lot for the brand. You'll have those dissenters, those guys who are going to say X, Y, and Z, but it really doesn't matter because the brand's actually going to do much better with Zach there. And again, people will say, well, why are you going back to Zach? Well, I'll ask the question, why have they been going back to a formula that is not working for them? They've done it now for 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. They've done the same thing over and over and over again, and it's not worked. It's not worked. So that you're going back to the same people, Jeff Johns, you're going back to the same people, Walter Amada, Toby Emmerich. You're using them and you're holding on to them and you're sticking with them, even though they're fired or whatever. But you won't go back to Zach? Why? Why is that? Why wouldn't you go back to Zach and Nolan and what they were doing originally? Because your movies, critically, they're doing okay, but box office wise, they're flopping like flies. I mean, what can I say? I don't expect anything different for The Flash. I expect it to flop. I don't care how good the CG is and stuff. The story, Black Adam flopped because, again, the CG was great, but the story's not the story. This is not a story that people want to see. Okay? You're doing a parody of Flashpoint Paradox. You're not doing Flashpoint Paradox. That's the problem. It's trying to Marvelize DC. We've seen it with Marvel. Marvel has their flavor. They've got it down to a science. Good for them. DC has a different flavor when it comes to movies. And so once you keep on trying to shove Marvel down DC fans' stomachs, they know what they want. And it's not Marvel. And it doesn't matter how much hype you give. It doesn't matter how much. It's the style. It's the way how you're approaching the movie that people don't like. Right? You want success, you're going to have to go with a style that's different. And you can't take a Marvel director that's been telling parody and jokes and expect him to produce something like Constantine, or produce something like The Dark Knight, or produce something like even The Batman, which was all right. I mean, it was all right. You know what I mean? It was all right. It's miles better than what they've been offering, you know? And so that's what they have to understand. Yes, let me explain something to them. You have to understand what your consumer base is. The majority of the consumers in DC, they're in DC because DC provides something different. They have depth, and they have something that can help you reflect a bit. It's much more. I hate to use this word, but it's much more mature. You can reflect on things. The Joker movies got layers to it. Wasn't a funny. Well, there was some jokes in it. I gotta admit, it was sick jokes, but nonetheless, it was funny. But those moments are they're not the major thing about the movie. So Joker, you look at the movies that DC fans come out to see, and the general audience, because their expectations for DC are these. You already got Marvel. Why do we need to be Marvel? Why do we need to be like them? I see Marvel trying to be like DC as well. Why are you trying to do that? Just be what you are. James Gunn belongs in Marvel. He does great. He epitomizes what Marvel is. He does not belong in DC. He just doesn't belong in DC. He doesn't belong in DC. He doesn't. I hate to say it like that, but that's the way it is. You listen to his discussions, you listen to what he's talking about, you listen to the topics that he brings up, you look at his cast, you look at what he's going in a Marvel direction. And it won't work for DC. It just won't. And to try to do crossover, okay, let me explain something else. James Gunn has a lot of fans. He has a good fan base. That's why his Guardian of the Galaxy movie, even though it's not doing as great as the previous ones, it's doing all right. But the reason these fans are supporting him, but they don't show that same level of support in DC, is because these fans are Marvel fans. They're Marvel fans. And Marvel's the thing. Marvel's the trend. There's a lot of bandwagoners. So these bandwagoners will support him in a brand that they consider to be the premier brand. It's the place to be. You even have DC fans. Some DC fans going and watching the Marvel stuff, even though they don't usually watch Marvel stuff. They went and paid to see James Gunn stuff. Unbelievable, but it is what it is. Now, when it comes to DC, however, he's not getting that level of support, and he won't, because he has a loyal fan base who will go with him. When it comes to like, I only got a couple of minutes left, so when it comes to things like, you know, his Marvel bits and stuff, he's just great for Marvel. He's a great fit for Marvel. He's just not a great fit for DC. He's like a square peg in a round hole. It just don't work. You understand? And it won't work, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is. Do I hate James Gunn for that? No, not necessarily. No, but he needs to go. Yeah, he needs to go. All right. So I don't know if I've run out of time. I don't know if this live is going to allow me to continue onwards, but I just want to add something extra. Um, the studio's been making, in my opinion, poor choices about how they're trying to carry the DC brand. I don't know what's the story with Zack Snyder, why they haven't gone back to him. Um, haven't even put out his movie in theaters. Um, but if I were them, if you don't want to get rid of James Gunn, fine. But the one thing I would say is ensure that you put the Snyder Cut out in theaters. You can do it in phases. You can do it as a short thing, a short theatrical run, maybe a week, 2 weeks, see what happens. And if the response is incredible, you continue it onwards. You extend it. But I think it's just a travesty not to put that thing in cinemas. And I don't care what they talk about. Well, the DCU centered around Justice League 2017. Nobody wants to hear that. The majority, again, of fans, and even the GA, who don't, you know, even the GA don't want to hear that. They don't like Justice League 2017. Why would you build any kind of universe off of that? Why? It's not liked. Why would you build something off of something that's not liked at all? You know, it's like the executives there, for some reason, are persisting with something that's not working for them. And they continue to persist with that. They're not listening to the fans. They're not listening to the GA. The GA has spoken on it as well. And they're just trying to slug their way until they commit suicide, which is what is going to happen. It's either their company's going to have to be sold over and somebody's going to flush them all out and they will not have work, or they will listen to the fans um, and restore the Snyderverse, or at least release the Snyder Cut. At least release the Snyder Cut in cinemas and see how it does. If you want to be cautious, you release the Snyder Cut in cinemas. Why are you waiting till the Flash flops? Why do you have to do that? So my suggestion to them, logistically speaking, is don't wait for the Flash to flop. Put a pause button on it. Release the Snyder Cut into cinemas. see how that performs, because that literally could flow into the Flash movie. Andy Muschietti kind of tried to link his movie with Zack Snyder's Justice League instead of the other Justice League movie, right? So try to let that go, because that will definitely help boost the Flash movie that's coming out after. It would help, everybody would get fired up about the Flash, because the Flash, literally at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, has this great moment that steals the whole show, right? Zack's setting up the Flash movie, right, to succeed. You put Zack Snyder's Justice League out there, you hold on to the Flash movie, and if I was them, if Zack Snyder's Justice League succeeds, okay, everybody benefits. James Gunn, what? Even if James Gunn's trying to end the universe, people are going to be so hot on the Flash. They're going to be so hype about the Flash that they're going to watch the Flash movie. Okay, fine. But if Zack Snyder's Justice League succeeded and does better than the company expected, or better than you know they thought, then it means you need to pursue that as well. Don't put a wrap on it. Pursue that as well, which means either Zach goes in a divergent part way. Oh, this is what happens if the Flash, or this is what's happening in the universe without the Flash in there, whatever. Or, which would make Zach have to think about a way to deal with the dark side issue, or change the story altogether. Or just get rid of James Gunn stuff. There's no future in that. Just get rid of that and continue with the Snyderverse. I think Abdi and DeLuca would favor the latter, because what has James Gunn and Peter Safran done for DC so far? Nothing. Their supporters and their followers, are very passionate about James Gunn and what he does. They try to defend him, but they have done nothing for DC. DC has been worse. DC has gotten worse with James Gunn and Peter Safran running things. And what's even more tragic is the fact that some of their own movies, the movies that Peter Safran even produced, are not doing well. And Blue Beetle, that could be a very bad thing as well, because Blue Beetle, trash Batman and Blue Beetle. I mean, it's just not cool to trash the the um the 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 pinnacle of your DC. This is the thing. It's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. That's the Trinity. That's the pinnacle of DC. Why would you trash it? Why would you try to trash those characters? I don't care what it is. You have certain reverence for them. Have a certain degree of respect for them, and they've been doing the opposite. And I don't care who's playing Superman or whatever. You don't trash. You don't in the DC trash those characters. There's one thing that I got to say about David Sandberg. Shout out to David Sandberg. He never tried, except the Shazam part where the Wizard was Wonder Woman. He never tried personally to trash, these DC icons, and you can't do that and think that you're destroying the best part, the parts where people want to come and see those icons. And I don't care who's playing the icon. You just don't do that, right? Marvel was very careful how they relayed the icon of Captain America, how they relayed the icon of Iron Man. These are the flagships that carry your franchise. How they dealt with the icon for the Hulk. Why would you trash your icons? The main icons on which the whole universe is built around. And so you saw the recklessness there, and you saw the lack of care, with James Gunn and all these guys for it. So it did a lot of damage to the universe. And a lot of people not interested in DC. They're not going to go see DC. They're not going to go see the Flash because of that. And then you have to understand how they treated Henry Cavill, how they're treating Ben Affleck. I mean, how they're treating Gal Gadot. It's not right. And when I have a Facebook group Wonder Woman Facebook group, and I mean, I have like almost 100 people join that group every day. Okay, and it's very, very popular. I mean, Gal is extremely popular. Wonder Woman, of all the icons out there, is the most popular icon out there. Superman's pretty good. Batman's pretty good, but Wonder Woman right now, people really are high on Wonder Woman. And I'm saying this right now so people understand. Dave, James Gunn is trying to phase out Gal. He's trying to get rid of all the old people. The old school, all the people who were originally from the original DCU. Even Ezra Miller, they're gonna try and get rid of him and get fresh blood. I understand younger people coming in to replace the older ones and all of that. I get it, but still, at the same time, this is unceremonious, and this is terrible what they're doing. And no matter what James Gunn says, that's what he's going to do. He's going to try and reset the thing and remove certain characters from it. And he's been killing off characters. He killed off some of the most enjoyable characters of Suicide, David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie. He's never going to let David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie see the light of day, because why are you going to introduce characters that have been killed off already? What's that do for continuity? And then people get anxious to see David Ayer's Suicide Squad. He's not gonna do that. Yeah, you saw what happened with the Snyder Cut. He's not gonna do that. So I'm saying this to say, the Snyder Cut being released, you guys made something happen, which is phenomenal, because now that opens a Pandora's box about how badly Warner Brothers mismanaged back in the day, and how badly they're mismanaging right now the DC properties and the DC franchise in the DCU. Outside of that franchise and outside of those properties, they're aside from Joker, which was a movie that they weren't really interested in greenlighting and didn't fund. Um, Really, the only other thing was the Batman movie, and the Batman movie, I mean, it's okay, but just knowing what happened around that movie and what happened with Ben Affleck really turns me off from watching it. I mean, it's a movie I would have been interested in if none of this stuff had happened, you know. And I'm always interested in different takes of characters and all that. I'm not interested in just Zack Snyder stuff and all that. I'm not like that. But at the same time, you know how they have been treating the characters in DC. It's just not been appropriate. It's not been cool. How they treated the actors in DC, how they treated the guys who produced movies in DC, like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I don't care what you say. The way how they treat Dwayne was not good in the trades and stuff. They didn't treat him good. And Dwayne's a good guy. And they're trying to put dirt on Dwayne, and they're trying to, stir up all this media gossip about him and negative things. And that's an attitude we saw with Dave. How they dealt with Dave Chappelle. How they dealt. It's just dirty. It's ugly. And this is the kind of people that are in this company doing these dirty, ugly things. And then you wanna have these heroes that we can look up to. Come on, man. It's not cool. So honestly, uh, you get rid of the 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 toxic nature of Warner Brothers Discovery. It's done worse. The people who replaced are doing worse than the people who were there before. Hopefully, with Jim Lee there, on the DC end of things, with Jeff Johns gone, they need to get rid of that guy. He just needs to. He's really helping the toxic nature of this company, and he just needs to go. He needs to go. He's not helping anything. His ideas don't help anything. His writing doesn't help anything. He's a talented writer, absolutely, but when it comes to movies, he just really shouldn't have a say in anything. You know, and certain people, just don't. They're not doing anything for the company. You had James Gunn had two movies come out under him. He had Black Adam come out under him. He had Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods come out. And those movies, I mean, they suffered. They suffered. He has done nothing, not one thing to change the image of these movies. He's done nothing to help it. He's hands off. Oh, these movies came out and they were in production before. No, but your job as head of DC is to ensure that these movies do well at the box office. You're supposed to do everything you possibly could to make sure they do well. And he hasn't. He just did a tweet and that was it. And so this guy, he's not interested in what is being offered now. He's trying to work now on other stuff that's just more of the same. It's mostly the same executive team, that's been there. And the only people who kind of were pushing in a different direction were Abdi and DeLuca, who are not the official DC heads. And people were saying, well, because Black Adam didn't work out well, they were gone. But Black Adam has outperformed every single DC movie since Aquaman. Black Adam is the only movie that actually did better than any other, make gross more than all of them. Okay, Black Adam's the only movie. Okay, and that's because some Snyderverse fans actually supported Black Adam, thinking erroneously that it would somehow restore the Snyderverse, which was not going to happen because Dwayne the Rock Johnson had his own ideas for a universe and how it would flush out. And obviously, Black Adam had nothing to do with the Snyderverse whatsoever. It was continuing off of, Suicide Squad and Justice League 2017, that world and that universe. But Dwayne, he put his best foot forward, and shout out to him. I hope he does well. I know he'll bounce back, but it's hard when you put all your life, your soul and everything into something, and it doesn't quite reap the benefits. But we again, as fans, we try to let him know, link that thing to the Snyderverse, and you're gonna really have a you're gonna have a combustible right there. He didn't do it, and so the results were what happened. Because you want to bring the fandom together. You don't want a rift. And what's happening is, and the only way the fandom's going to come together, in my opinion, only in my personal opinion, is if Zack Snyder is allowed to release first the Snyder Cut in cinemas and finish his movie. Because then, if he's finishing his movie, then fans have to go and watch his movie, right? So they'll be focused on his movie. And then whatever else is happening with DC or whatever, you don't want to have to worry about that because fans are not going to be focused on that. It's really that simple, you know. But if people want more of what he's offering, why are you not giving? I mean, you wanted to green light a Wonder Woman, 3 sequel, which you ended up canning anyway. You wanted to you green light a Batgirl movie, and you ended up canning that at 2. You green light you greenlight James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. You had a Peacemaker series come off after a flop movie in The Suicide Squad. But you, for some reason, with a director who has never had a movie that flopped in the DCEU, for some reason you won't let him put out his movie in cinema. It doesn't make sense, people. You know, the executive arm of WBD, somebody needs to talk to them that set them straight. I don't know if it's the AT&T investors who are not happy with what is happening. There are actual executives in WBD who are not happy with what is happening. They need to set that record straight. The majority of fans and the general audience do not want, I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell them, I'm trying to be as straight as I can, do not want what WBD right now is offering in terms of the DCU with James Gunn and Peter Safran. They've made that statement clear the last 2 movies, and they're going to continue to do that with Blue Beetle. And as long as they're putting out DCU movies, they're going to show you that. They're going to show you, because it's more of the same. It's this MCU approach to DC. They don't really vibe it. They don't care about it, and they don't want it. Okay? They don't. And so it's a crash and burn. It's suicide. It's suicide. The company's committing suicide right now, continuing to do these unpopular things, continuing to not listen to the fans, continuing to dis keep the general audience disinterested in what they're doing. And they think by putting advertising campaigns and having certain social media influencers pushing these movies that somehow that will help. Look, Black Adam looked fantastic. It looked fantastic. Let's be real. It made some money. It even had Snyderverse fans supporting it. Some of them. And it still didn't break. Why? Your your movie, The Flash, is going up against Transformers. I'm not stoked about Transformers anymore. Type of movie. There's no variety. So when Joker came out, everybody came to see Joker because it was a compensation for all these ha ha he he movies. Which, I mean, it's okay to have that, to have comedies and stuff like that. It's okay to have it, but where it falls short is if everything's like that. Everything's that sort of thing. Every movie's like that. So you got people who dying to see something different, you know, having to wait sometimes years to see something that's different. So Matt Reeves, the Batman, got the kind of response it got. So Matt Reeves, the Batman, got the response it got because people were just dying to see something serious, something take on superheroes that was a lot more, um, just a lot more interesting. Not the same thing. Superhero fatigue could happen if everybody keeps on portraying superheroes one way. You see, so Zack Snyder brought something fresh and different, like Christopher Nolan did in response to Batman and Robin. He brought something different to the table that people like myself got interested in because I hadn't seen Superman like that. I didn't understand why Superman was the way he was, and we got the why of things, and then Zach started doing the why of things in a deeper way with Chris Terrio instead of David Goyer, and that sort of was like, wow, so this is why superheroes could be relevant. This is why superheroes are important. This is why we could use these things to talk about other things in life, like what I just spoke about. And you know, uh, that is so much more to me than going and watching some kick up movie or some kind of simple plot line where people are at odds with each other, kind of the Josh Whedon kind of formula that they used for the Avengers. And even I didn't like Infinity War. I'll just be honest with you guys because of the jokes, and the Russo brothers tried to put humor in there, but it was forced again. It felt very forced. It felt like the studio had mandates. They couldn't go deep into the characters. The pathos was very superficial, very over exaggerated. And I'm not saying that, but this is just for me as a much older person. I didn't find it interesting. Thanos was somewhat interesting, but then his idea and his philosophy fell apart with certain situations. So to me, everything was just flaky and sketchy, you know. And I'm not really into that. I'm not that kind of nerd. I'm a guy who likes to take things and apply them. And, another thing that people need to understand is, people like to empathize with the villain, but what about the heroes? Why are we not empathizing with the heroes? Why are we not? Why are not the heroic values pushed for us? Because the villain, okay, we can idea villain, but in real life, why are we even IDing a villain? We want something for us to use and utilize, so we want to see the hero in the story. But I think that not to say you can't have an interesting villain. I mean, Lex Luthor is an incredibly interesting villain, but you have to juxtapose that with the values of the hero and how the hero, the, the villain should add depth to the hero story. The villain should add depth because the villain is the pushback. And why is it that the hero, it's not just the hero prevails. No. Why is it that the hero prevails? The why of it is also very important. It's instructive, it's didactic, and so on. And I just think that that is missing in Marvel movies. Just my personal opinion. Maybe people can extract that, but I don't get that. And so for me, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, I prefer something that's more organic, more less Hollywood. And I think Zach brings that less Hollywood thing. You're not trying to spruce it up and make it look good. And no, no, there's a purpose behind it. There's a reason for it. There's a lesson behind it. Those kinds of little nuggets in there. I like that. All right, and I think a lot of people like myself like that. All right, so it's not just a comic book movie. It's a movie like other movies out there where if it's not comic book, it shows certain values. It's telling you something. It's a story behind the story. There's more to it, and you don't get that with, in my opinion, MCU. You just don't. You get a story. Again, Jeff Johns is kind of like that too. He gives you a story. Kind of wows your mind a little bit with his little sci-fi thing or whatever he's doing, but he doesn't give a deeper thing. There's not a deeper theme being discussed. And for me, I grew up with comic books from an earlier era, so there was always deeper themes running in the comic books. Today, what comic books are very superficial and watered down so much. There was a poster put up, or a picture of the superheroes eating burgers. Superman was floating in the air and he had a burger on his foot. And what it was, let me say something. I'm not against that per se, even though it's very commercialism. I don't think that's the issue. Even though I said in my post that I didn't really like it. My thing is this: if this is the only way the superheroes could chill out with each other by eating burgers and you know, you know, I'm not against anybody saying, but if that's the only way they get to form relationships with one another and fraternize, that's lame. Okay, and we saw it in Zack Snyder's Justice League, how they communicated with each other and started to link up and mend with each other. But they are busy people. They're going to be doing things on their own. They don't have time to. Well, maybe they do. Again, but I feel that particular icon. It's so weird hearing critics and people say, "Oh, Zack Snyder's movies are very juvenile." To me, that's very juvenile. It's very superficial. It's something teens would do, like Saved by the Bell and those kinds of things. They would, have their chummy buddy moments eating together, but they're not discussing anything important, right? You could see that with teens and with little kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have a demographic for that, so you should address that demographic. But if you're looking at a much more mature sort of thing where you really want to build a lasting relationship and things like that, I think that that poster does not, to me, uh, sort of epitomize that. If you're in a movie, for example. But of course, you can do anything you want with the characters, and you can have a depiction. And I may not necessarily, flow with that, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that why not? I mean, they chilling out with each other. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? So, I just wanted to put that up there because um, I just thought that the Marvel formula is what DC's trying to have. I know Adam Howitz is there, but still, please stop it with that. We need to can that because your audience does not really, they're not interested in it. There's already Marvel. We don't need that. We don't need more of the same. We need something different. Okay, and James Gunn's not going to bring something different. He's his style. He's the. If you want a director that kind of typifies what Marvel is, James Gunn and Taika Waititi are the guys. Your man. Okay, they epitomize what Marvel is. Not so much the Russo brothers. The Russo brothers actually write story and they try to get depth and they really are meticulous in what they're doing. But James Gunn epitomizes what Marvel is. Okay, he'll do exceptionally well in Marvel. He's not going to epitomize what DC is. I'm telling you, people are not interested in what he has in store to start with. And people will say, "Well, maybe he'll surprise us." No. Okay, he did his passion project with TSS. Didn't do well. He's not going to bring anything to the table that is any different from that. and we all know that because we see his discussions on Twitter on what he's talking about and it's very superficial. And he even acknowledged he really doesn't know much about Superman lore. He's not getting into it and stuff like that. So it's really not a good idea. It's really not a good idea to have this guy doing it. Um, but again, the studio just pushed him to do it, and that's just not a good idea, you know. So he really prefers something offbeat characters like the Suicide Squad and stuff, and he didn't do very well with that either, box office wise, that is. So I'm trying. You would think such intelligent people dealing crunching all these numbers and stuff, you would think they understand their audience and what their audience wants. They don't. So inevitably, what is going to happen is a lot of people are going to boycott this stuff. They don't like what happened with Henry Cavill. They don't like what happened with um, Ben Affleck. They don't like what's happening with Gal. Basically, James Gunn's put Gal on a shelf. She's gonna do cameos or whatever, but she doesn't have a movie. They canned Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman 3. So and there's huge Wonder Woman base. So it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for the future. Superman versus the elite or whatever. That don't cut it. It just don't cut it. Tell me you got other Justice League characters in there. It's just not good. Like the Flash movie, it's just gonna flop. Thinking you have all these cameos and stuff and that's gonna help. Nope, it's just gonna flop it. It's just gonna flop. You know, that's not what people care about. They care about story. They care about something that's not the MCU. If you give them something that's not the MCU, they're gonna be fine. If you give them something that's the MCU, they're not gonna be fine with it, and they're not gonna go see it. And the Flash movie's been through so much problems, but they have a lot of footage, and they could easily turn it in a direction to restore the Snyderverse because I'm pretty sure they have footage of Ben and Henry and Gal and the Flash going back to them. So if needs be, they could tweak it and move it back to the Snyderverse if they want to. I don't know if they will, but that's something that they should probably consider. Um, that would repair a lot. It would bring a lot of hype. People actually go and support those films, and they should really test that out. So that's what I got for you guys. I'm gonna catch you guys later. I am Christ Am Disciple. I hope you guys, if you watch this video that long, then you really, 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 you really enjoy what I'm saying. So good, right? And my mic should be on. So I'll catch you guys later. I am Christ Am Disciple.